The evening air buzzed with artificial laughter and the clinking of expensive glasses as I pushed open the grand glass doors of the Ivy Room. My boots, worn thin from long shifts and double overtime, tapped against the marble floors like they didn't belong. And maybe I didn't. Not in a place filled with glittering name tags, patent leather smiles, and people who shook hands for sport. But I was here for my brother. Or at least I thought I was. I caught sight of him instantly. Derek. My older brother. Dressed in a navy designer suit he once said cost more than my monthly rent. His arm was around some executive's shoulder, flashing that polished smile of his. I raised my hand with a small wave, half hoping he wouldn't notice me. But he did. He stared at me for a second. His eyes traveled from my faded jeans to the work polo I'd pressed 3 times just to make it look halfway decent. Then he smirked. "Oh, look," he said loud enough for the group to hear. "The janitor's here." A few heads turned. Some awkward laughs followed. My heart thudded. I stood frozen for a second, blinking through it like it hadn't just slapped me. He stepped toward me, lowering his voice just enough to make it feel personal. "Seriously, Sam? This is a corporate celebration. You clean toilets for a living. You really had to show up and embarrass me?" I opened my mouth to reply, but I couldn't find my voice. Then came the final cut. "Just stay out of the photos, yeah?" he added, then turned his back. I stood there in that glitzy room filled with people in tailored clothes and champagne dreams, suddenly aware of every flaw in my outfit, every callus on my hands, and every drop of sweat that had ever clung to my brow. I'd come straight from work, because he'd asked me to come. I'd told my supervisor I had a family event, and she'd smiled and told me to go. "You deserve a good night." But this wasn't that night. Still, I didn't leave. Something deep inside told me not to. Instead, I walked to the back of the room, past people who barely noticed, and grabbed a glass of water. I stood by the window and looked out at the skyline. Somewhere beneath those city lights were the buildings I scrubbed clean, the stairwells I mopped, the office trash bins I emptied every night. I hadn't told anyone what I'd done a week ago. Not even Derek. But the secret itched under my skin like a hidden tattoo. Minutes passed. The CEO was due any second. Derek kept checking his watch, whispering to his colleagues, probably anticipating a promotion announcement. I knew how hard he had worked. I knew how obsessed he had become with climbing the corporate ladder at any cost. I also knew something he didn't. And just then, the ballroom doors opened again. The room fell into a respectful hush. Mr. Fletcher, the CEO, walked in. A tall man in his 60s with a calm presence that seemed to command attention without demanding it. He didn't head straight for the stage.
No.
He scanned the crowd, and his eyes landed on me. A slight, knowing smile tugged at his lips. He walked straight toward where I stood, my cheap flats scuffing the marble, my hands trembling slightly around the glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Fletcher said, projecting his voice. "Before we begin tonight's celebration, I want to introduce someone important." Derek's expression shifted. A smug smile. He adjusted his blazer. But Mr. Fletcher kept walking, until he reached me. "Please give a warm welcome," he said, "to our company's new majority owner, Miss Samantha Grayson." Gasps broke out like fireworks. Derek spun around so fast he nearly knocked over a champagne flute. His face drained of color. His jaw slackened. I smiled, just a little. He stumbled forward. What are you talking about?" he stammered. Mr. Fletcher turned to him calmly. "The board approved it unanimously. The buyout was discreet, but finalized last week. Your sister is now the largest shareholder of Grayson and Klein Tech." I stood tall, not to gloat, not to embarrass, just to breathe. To finally stand in a room where I didn't have to shrink. Derek's knees buckled. He literally dropped. Someone helped him up. The rest of the room stared, some in awe, others in pure confusion. But I wasn't there for applause. I wasn't there for revenge. I was there to show that dignity doesn't need wealth to exist. And sometimes the people we write off are the ones writing the next chapter. The moment Derek dropped to his knees, the room seemed to hold its breath. Time slowed, not for drama, but because no one knew what to say next. It was one of those scenes people would whisper about later. At the water cooler, in private group chats, maybe even on anonymous forums. Did you see what happened at Derek Grayson's promotion party? I didn't move. I didn't rush in to help him. Not because I was angry, but because I knew he needed that moment. The shock. The silence. The truth landing like thunder in a sky he thought he owned. Mr. Fletcher clapped a hand gently on Derek's shoulder. You might want to stand up, son. The cameras are still rolling. Derek got up slowly, his face pale, his hands twitching like his entire nervous system had gone offline. This is a joke, right? He whispered to no one in particular. It's not, I said calmly. My voice didn't tremble this time. He looked at me like I'd stolen something that was meant to be his. And in his world I had. But he didn't know the half of it yet. I walked toward the center of the room, every eye fixed on me. The new owner, the janitor, the contradiction no one could quite reconcile. I know this is unexpected, I said into the mic the CEO offered me. I didn't come here tonight to make anyone feel small. I came because my brother invited me. Some murmurs. He didn't know. I continued. And I didn't plan to reveal anything tonight. But life doesn't always give us perfect timing. People leaned in. Not just to hear, but to feel. I started working for Grayson and Klein 5 years ago, I said. Not in this building. Not even in this city. I cleaned floors, scrubbed tiles, wiped down desks no one ever thanked me for. And one day, I found out the company was hemorrhaging money. I did my homework. I asked questions. I used the same grit I needed to survive life to understand a business no one thought I was smart enough to touch. A pause. Turns out, no one was watching the numbers as closely as I was. People were still as stone. I reached out to a silent investor. I bought in. Small at first. Then a little more. And then a little more. Until last week, I had enough to walk into that boardroom and say, I'm ready. And they listened. Not because of my last name, but because of my work. I looked straight at Derek. His eyes were bloodshot now. Not with anger, with disbelief. Maybe shame. I'm not here to take anything from anyone, I said quietly. But I'm not going to hide who I am either. I clean. I serve. I work. And now, I own. You could hear the heartbeat of the room. I stepped back. Mr. Fletcher smiled gently and took the mic again. Well, I think that speaks for itself. And just like that, the music started again, but the mood had changed. Conversations were softer, glances sharper, and people looked at me not with pity, but with something else. Respect. Maybe curiosity. Maybe both. Derek didn't come near me again that night. But someone else did. An older woman, in a silver shawl and glasses that glittered in the low light, approached me by the hors d'oeuvres table. You don't remember me, she said. But you used to clean the 11th floor. I blinked, then nodded slowly. I do remember you. You always said goodnight when I passed by. Her eyes glistened. And you always made sure my plants got water. Even when no one else did. I watched you, dear. I watched the way you took care of things no one else noticed. I knew you'd go far. I smiled then, not because I was proud of the money or the title, but because someone had seen me when I didn't think anyone did. That night, as I walked home, yes, walked, still too grounded to call a cab, I thought about how many moments we live thinking no one notices. Thinking kindness goes unseen. Effort unappreciated. How easy it is to believe the world only rewards those who already have power. But sometimes it rewards those who remember how to clean up after themselves and others. And I wasn't done yet. Because this story wasn't about revenge. It was about rising. The next morning, the world felt different. Not because of the boardroom title. Not because of the whispers or the stares. But because my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls, unread messages, emails flooding in like a tidal wave. Some congratulating me. Some questioning. A few, well, they didn't hide the bitterness. But the one call I didn't expect? Derek. I stared at his name on the screen, thumb hovering. Then, finally, I picked up. Sam, he said, his voice quieter than usual. Not cocky. Not performative. Yes, I replied, letting the silence stretch. I didn't know, he started. I mean, if I had any idea, you would have treated me better? I cut in, softly but firmly. He paused. That's not fair. No, I said. What wasn't fair was you calling me an embarrassment in front of 200 people. I was under pressure. You were cruel, Derek. You've been cruel. Ever since Dad died. You climbed that ladder so fast, you forgot how to look down at the ones holding it steady. Silence. I didn't mean it, he finally whispered. I know, I said. That's what makes it worse. He sighed. Can we talk? Face to face. Part of me didn't want to. But another part, the part that remembered sneaking out snacks for him when he'd study late in college, the part that patched his shirt with duct tape during high school science fair, said yes. Come to the cafe on 6. In 30 minutes. It was raining when I got there. I sat by the window, watching droplets snake down the glass. Derek walked in 5 minutes late, soaked despite the umbrella. He looked different. The suit was gone. Just jeans and a hoodie. The kind of clothes he never wore unless he was in real trouble. He sat down slowly, not meeting my eyes. I panicked last night, he said. I thought it was a prank. Or some elaborate humiliation. It wasn't, I said simply. I know now. I mean, the CEO gave a speech, Sam. I sipped my coffee. And I guess I'm just trying to understand. When did this all happen? When you were busy pretending I didn't exist, I said, not with venom but with calm. His head dropped. I'm not here to make you feel guilty, I continued. I just want you to understand that I didn't do this to prove something. I did it because I could. And because someone had to. You own the company I work for now, he muttered. Do you know how surreal that is? I shrugged. I used to clean bathrooms you walked past without saying hi. That was surreal too. He exhaled, long and heavy. Are you going to fire me? I looked at him. No, I said. But I'm going to reassign you. His eyes flicked up. What does that mean? It means you're going to shadow someone from the ground floor. Learn what it's like for the people you forget to thank. You're demoting me? No. I'm giving you a second chance. The one you never gave me. He blinked. Once. Twice. You're serious? Very. The waitress came by to refill our drinks, and I thanked her. Derek didn't. But as she walked away, he looked down ashamed. That was a start. Later that afternoon, I walked through the company's downtown office. Not with security or PR. Just alone. I stepped into the janitor's closet. My old sanctuary. Still smelled like bleach and rubber gloves. I closed my eyes, remembering the nights I cried here. Not because I hated the job, but because I hated how invisible it made me feel. I didn't want to be invisible anymore. I walked to the 12th floor and knocked on the HR director's door. She looked up, startled. Samantha, sorry, Ms. Grayson, she said quickly. No need for that. I'm still Sam. She smiled nervously. I need to make some changes, I said. Starting with wage restructuring for our sanitation staff. And I want them included in the annual company retreat. Every department. No exceptions. She nodded, mouth parting slightly in surprise. That's groundbreaking. No. It's overdue. That night I called Mom. She still lived in the same little house. Still had the same floral wallpaper. And still thought I worked night shifts at an office building. When she picked up, I said, Mom, there's something I need to tell you. And when I did, her silence wasn't disbelief. It was pride too big for words. She cried. I cried. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. Because even though the world saw me now as owner or powerhouse, or that girl who cleaned floors, my mother saw me as Samantha. Her daughter. Her fighter. Her kind one. 2 weeks passed. The company was still adjusting to the shockwave of my arrival. Some embraced it. Others watched quietly, waiting for me to slip up. That was fine. I wasn't here to win a popularity contest. I was here to rebuild a culture I once felt discarded by. And I was doing it one department at a time. The first thing I did was remove all the executive-only coffee machines. Why should better coffee be reserved for people with nicer titles? I said during the weekly staff meeting. From now on, everyone drinks the same blend. The finance team chuckled. The janitorial staff looked stunned. But it was just the beginning. I restructured shift benefits, implemented mental health check-ins, increased maternity and paternity leave, and removed the unpaid intern loophole that had become corporate's dirty little secret. I wasn't here to burn the building down. I was here to turn the lights on in every dark hallway. Derek had started his reassignment. He shadowed a man named Luis on the 5th floor, one of the cleaning leads who'd worked there for 11 years. Luis didn't treat Derek like a manager or a threat. He treated him like any new trainee, a little rough, a little honest, but fair. You ever cleaned a toilet with dried chewing gum stuck under the rim? Luis asked, holding up gloves. Derek gagged. That's what I thought, Luis smirked. 3 days in, Derek called me. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't know how hard this work was. You didn't care, I replied. Now you do. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. People began opening up to me. A woman in IT sent me a handwritten note saying, I've been here 9 years. No one ever knew my daughter had leukemia. No one asked. But I saw how you talked to the mailroom guy. You made him feel human. Thank you. A man in logistics walked up to me in the elevator, eyes darting around. I saw you eating lunch in the break room last week, he said. I didn't think owners did that. They don't, I replied. But I'm not just an owner. What are you then? Someone who remembers what it's like to be forgotten. He smiled, nodded once, and got off at the 6th floor. One morning, I arrived early, before the cleaning crews had finished, before the executives even stirred in their high-rise lofts. I found Derek sitting in the lobby, rubbing his hands together, waiting for Luis. He looked exhausted, but not in a bad way. I haven't had this much dirt under my nails since Little League, he said with a half-smile. I sat beside him, sipping black coffee. You know, he continued, you didn't have to do this. You could have fired me, made an example of me. Why would I do that? Because I humiliated you. You could have gotten revenge. I shook my head. That's not why I bought the company. Then why? I looked over at the giant company logo on the wall, polished steel letters that once meant power only for the few. Because no one should feel ashamed of how they earn an honest living. He nodded, looking down at his shoes. And because I wanted to forgive you, I added, but I needed you to feel what I felt first. Not to hurt you, but to heal me. Derek's eyes watered. He didn't speak. He just reached into his backpack and pulled something out. A wrapped sandwich, with a sticky note on it. You used to pack these for me when we were kids, he said. Thought maybe I'd return the favor. I took it. He didn't say sorry again. He didn't have to. Sometimes, redemption doesn't come from words. It comes from sandwiches in silence at 6 a.m. Later that week, HR told me morale had gone up. Turnover had dropped. And a record number of employees had signed up for Community Volunteering Day. Luis? He'd been nominated for Employee of the Month. By Derek. When I asked Luis how that felt, he shrugged. He's learning. I'll give him that. And me? I was still scrubbing. Not floors anymore, but systems. Attitudes. Walls people built between job titles. And maybe most importantly, I was scrubbing off the shame I'd carried all those years. Because shame clings like grease, quiet, sticky, and hard to wash off. But every day, it faded more. And in its place, pride. Not the loud, chest-thumping kind, but the quiet kind that lets you walk into any room, no matter how grand, and know you belong. It was the company's annual leadership summit. This time, instead of hosting it at a 5-star hotel with overpriced buffets and stiff collars, I moved it to the community center downtown. The one I used to mop floors in at night while studying investor reports on my phone. Some executives grumbled at first. No valet parking. No imported champagne. But most of them, especially the new hires, the interns, the ground-level employees who were invited for the first time, came with smiles wide enough to light up the place. Derek was one of the first to arrive. He wore a plain button-up and jeans. No Rolex, no pretense. He even helped set up the folding chairs. I didn't say anything. I just watched from across the room as he passed out coffee, joked with the facility's crew, and sat next to a woman from shipping. He didn't act like the man I once knew, the one who couldn't even say the word janitor without wrinkling his nose. This version of Derek was quieter, humble, and real. That day I gave a speech, but it wasn't rehearsed. No teleprompter. Just me, standing in front of a crowd that had once felt unreachable. I want to talk about labels, I began. The ones we wear, the ones people give us, and the ones we sometimes believe are true. Eyes locked on me. No one scrolled their phones. I used to believe I was just the cleaning girl. I believed it every time someone avoided my gaze, or left their trash behind like it was my job to be invisible. I believed it until I didn't. I paused. I didn't change who I was. I just stopped apologizing for it. There was a soft murmur of agreement. And the truth is, there is nothing small about service. There is nothing embarrassing about work that supports others. And there is no one, no matter their job, who should ever feel beneath respect. A standing ovation followed. But not from Derek. He just stayed seated, eyes red, jaw tight, clapping slowly. Because I wasn't talking to the room anymore, I was talking to us. To our past. To everything that broke, and everything we were still healing. That night, after the summit ended and the hall cleared out, I walked out into the parking lot and found Derek leaning on the hood of his car. He looked up at the sky, then at me. You know, he said, I used to think success meant looking expensive. I leaned beside him. What do you think now? I think it means being someone your younger self would be proud of. A gust of wind passed between us. You know what I think, I said. What? That maybe success is when you stop needing revenge. When what you build matters more than what you were denied. He smiled. That's why you're the boss. No, I said. That's why I stopped being angry. A month later, I made my last big move. I announced the creation of a full-ride scholarship, funded entirely by a percentage of my own shares, for children of janitorial, maintenance, cafeteria, and admin staff. I named it the Grayson Grant, after my father, because despite the shame we felt growing up, he was the one who taught me that dignity doesn't need defending. It just needs remembering. Years passed. The company changed. Slowly, but deeply. Derek eventually moved on, by his own choice. Not in disgrace, but with grace. He started a nonprofit that helped people re-enter the workforce. I even donated to it anonymously every year. Luis got promoted. Twice. And me? I never bought a penthouse. I stayed in the same walk-up apartment. Same creaky floors. Same corner cafe. Because every time I thought about upgrading, I remembered the janitor's closet. That tiny space where I learned the value of work, of watching, of dreaming without needing anyone's permission. And on some days, when I walked into the office early, I'd still greet the cleaning crew by name. Because I never forgot. Not who I was. And certainly not who I still am.